wish it were. Nobody wants it.
Oh yeah.
Not expecting anybody. But,
Understood.
matter of fact, I kind of
Okay.
we don't have any other time.
Understood.
Somebody just walk in like.
Make sure you get you off here. Go.
You put me at somebody's house.
I'm gonna take it back.
It made it look like I was at somebody's house and got a nice house.
It did, right? It's supposed to take it back. I think I have to go unlive to change it. That was fun. For a second.
Yeah, I was looking like, what is that?
Like I was playing with it earlier, and because it's moving so slow, I can't
Yeah.
like get to where I need to go.
I wonder why it's moving so slow.
I think because it's actually using the camera. I never use it. That's it. There. No. Back to the recording button. Okay. There you go. There we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Wait, stop.
All right.
All right.
Ready when you are.
Yeah. This is sitting here with Jeff Mott from SessionWorks Studios in Hurst, Texas.
How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing great. Doing great.
Good. Man, so how does it feel? How long have you guys been here?
We've been at this location. Totally, we've been in business since 2007.
Okay.
I don't remember what year we moved over here. It's been like 6 years, I think.
Okay.
Something like that.
So you've been here for a while?
A little while, yeah. Long enough to wish we'd paint again or something.
And where were you guys previously?
We were just 3 blocks down the road.
Okay, so
we were leasing a building before, and we moved out of there and decided to buy a place. So.
Okay. So I did do a little research on you, and
Not like police records.
nothing like that. No. What I want to start off with is I'm reading that your father was in the business.
Yes, somewhat. He did do some live recording work. He was never working in the studio, but he would set up sound systems for churches and stuff like that. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did that get you interested in starting?
Yeah, I mean, he would always have like extra equipment laying around the house. So let's say a church was getting a new sound system, they were probably going to be throwing out the old stuff. A lot of times he would at home, and so some of it worked, some of it didn't. And I eventually just started hooking stuff up. And like, how does this work? How do you make this sound come into here and go out of there? And
Okay.
yeah, I was just messing around with that stuff. So.
Okay. And that definitely leads me into my next question. Are you engineering or producing?
Both, really. The engineering side is more technical. Making sure, like I was saying, that the sound gets from point A to point B to point C or wherever it needs to go, and that it gets there in the way it needs to get there. But the production side is sometimes more fun because you get to, involve yourself in the actual arrangements and the composition, the lyrics, whatever. It just depends on what the artist needs. I like both of them a lot, though, because some of the engineering too is just repairing the equipment.
True.
Yeah, there's more to it than just moving faders and plugging microphones in and things like that. So
understandable.
Yeah.
Now, this is a controversial question,
Mm-hmm.
but I come across a lot of different answers. What is the difference between an engineer and a producer?
Well, it depends on who you ask, but in my opinion, an engineer is someone that handles the recording process, meaning just like I was saying before, getting things recorded, getting it laid down. The mixing aspect, the mastering aspect. It's more about the technical side of things. Whereas a producer's job is more interacting directly with the artist, making sure that, should we put the hook here? Maybe we should add a bridge. Are we sure we like that tempo or that key? Or, maybe we need a different musician, or should we add violins and strings, or, something like that. They're two completely different things, but nowadays you have guys that are both. And
which I come across a lot.
You rarely run into a session anymore where there's a separate engineer and a producer. It doesn't happen that much anymore. The budget's not there for it. Back in the days of the Beatles, you would have a producer, an engineer. You would have what they called a technical engineer, and those were the guys that went in and set up the microphones. They didn't do anything else. They just went in and placed the microphones. So if you're actually running the mixing board and you needed a microphone moved, you'd have to call in and say, "Hey, we need somebody to come move the mic closer to the tuba or something." There was a different person for that. Now it's like one guy does it all, so to speak. So.
And which one would you prefer? Would you prefer to have?
I like doing all of it personally. I mean, why ask somebody else to do it when you can do it yourself?
True.
But at the same time, working. I've had plenty of sessions where I've been just the engineer, or I've been just the producer, or I've been just the musician, or whatever. And it's like there's a place for both. Sometimes you can have too many people working on something and nothing gets done. But sometimes you can have not enough people working on it. And you need those other ears sometimes to go, "Hey, what if we tried this?" You never know.
So on the best song, how many hands would you say?
The best song that's ever been done, or like the best song that I've ever worked on, or
just in general, like it's a hit, it's that song, and it's like,
again, it kind of depends. I mean, I've seen really, really great records come both ways, and I've seen really bad records come both ways. So, I mean, just from my personal experience, there's some records I've worked on where there's been 3 or 4 people involved in the actual production and writing, and that doesn't even include the person that's singing the song or playing the instruments or anything like that. I mean, we did one project up here where there was something like 50-something people on it, including the musicians. And I mean, we had a choir, and we had 3 drummers and all this different stuff. So it's like that couldn't have happened any other way because there was so much input from each person. But it was kind of planned that way. Gotcha. Now, sometimes you'll get a session where it's like there really only needs to be the engineer and, like, if it's a rapper, just the guy rapping. The beat's already done. We don't need anybody else.
Right.
And there's 7 people sitting on the couch that are throwing in all their input that really don't have any idea what they're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
That happens too. So same thing with, I mean, it doesn't really matter the genre. I've watched it happen. Girlfriends sitting on the couch telling the band that, "Oh, that's not the take." And like, it sounds pretty good to me, but whatever.
Oh, is that a big annoyance of yours?
It can be. Anything that impedes getting the music done can be an annoyance. But if that's kind of part of sometimes becoming the producer in a session. It's like I wasn't asked to produce the session, but you kind of start off a session. You go, "Okay, I could sit here and just record the stuff, make it sound good, and leave, and everybody be happy. But I feel like this song needs this or needs that, and I'd be wrong not to bring it up." Now, if the band or the artist says, "Nah, we don't want your input," I'm like, "All right, I'll shut up. Let me just hit record." That's what that's what you're paying me for, whatever. But a lot of people come to me specifically for the reason that I do understand production. I do understand music because a lot of recording engineers either were or are musicians. And then there's also some that aren't musicians. Like I personally can't read sheet music, but I can play pretty much any instrument in the studio to a certain extent.
Oh, wow.
I'm not a virtuoso at any level.
That's cool, though.
But if I have an idea for something, I can go in there on the piano and go, "What if you tried it this way?" Might not be able to tell them the exact notes I'm playing, but I can play it for them. And then they can go, "Oh, that's a good idea," and then actually play it, or write it down or whatever. So
that's dope, though.
Well, it can be. Sometimes it gets in the way. It's like I have this idea, but I can't really express it the right way because I don't know how to just sit down and write down the musical notes.
Yeah.
But what they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I've never bothered trying to learn how to read sheet music.
Understood. It can be a beast. I will say that. So what would you say is your favorite program to mix in and master in, or are they the same?
For me, it's the same. When I'm doing digital recording, I use what used to be known as Sonar Platinum, which we still use that version. Is now I think they've changed the name to Cakewalk by BandLab. Some company bought it, changed the name back.
Okay.
A lot of people use Pro Tools, different programs. I've always just been comfortable with Sonar Platinum. I like the way it works. It's kind of fully customizable So I can set it up the exact way that I want it. I don't have to be stuck with, oh, here's how the interface works. I can do a lot of things to it that you can't do with other programs that have actually sped up my workflow. So that happened, many, many, many years ago. So it was like, all right, well, I've already got this going. Why would I switch over to this other stuff? And that, sometimes can be an issue because other studios record in Pro Tools or Logic or whatever other program. So it seems like, well, they're going to bring it to me to mix. So if they want to send it to me in Pro Tools, that's cool. But I'm going to move it out of Pro Tools into the program I prefer and use the tools that I'm comfortable with. But as far as like, there's really no sound quality difference between any of them. If you set them up right. Like one program doesn't sound better than the other. It's all digital.
That's a good tidbit. And how about the analog side?
Oh, on analog side, I mean, any pick a tape machine, they all pretty much, I'm not going to say they all sound the same. They all have their own little sound. But I mean, we do a lot of stuff. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but yeah, I think you can. So the 24-track 2-inch machine that's back here in the back, that's kind of the preferred format, just because you can get so many tracks on it. But the tape is way more expensive than a 1-inch machine. The bigger the tape, the more it costs. And we get people that come in and want to go to tape, but it is very expensive. It's about $400 a reel, and you get, I think, 33 minutes on a reel.
Oh,
if you're recording at a source. Well, you can still do punch-ins and you can still do overdubs, but you don't have the ability to copy and paste. So, like it was, say for a rap session, R&B session, or whatever, where typically you'll just get the hook done once and then copy and paste it in the session. You can't do that on tape.
Oh, so you got to sing it the same way every time.
Yeah. But I also use that mentality because I grew up doing tape, well before digital came along. So even recording with digital, I'll go, okay, well, that was cool for the first hook. What if on the second hook we add another harmony or add some cool ad-libs or maybe change a lyric here or there or something? You just do something different so it's not the same thing over and over. Yeah. And that can be done either way, whether it's on tape or in the box digital. So.
Okay. Some good info right there. Now, what would you say, since you say you don't write the sheet music, what would you say is the best instrument or your favorite instrument to go in and mess with?
Well, the easiest for me is drums, just because that's kind of what I started on. But I mean, I love playing piano. I'm just not extremely good at it. So it's like I can go in and I can play something out and I might be able to play it in a slower tempo and then have someone else actually play it, go, this is what I'm looking for, but it needs to be twice as fast because my hands just don't move that quick. You would think they would with this, having to move on the computer keyboard and stuff that quickly, but yeah, my brain just doesn't work that way.
Oh, yeah.
So, but drums, I can, for the most part, like if I have an idea, I can go in there and play it. Okay. And I'll either show it to the drummer, or if there's not a drummer on the session, there's a lot of times I am the drummer on the session. So
now that's cool.
Which gets very interesting because it's like, okay, I'm supposed to be the engineer, the producer, and also play drums on this. So there's a lot of running back and forth.
I bet you're definitely tired after those sessions.
Yeah, I try not to do that very often, and we have other engineers here too that are also musicians. So in fact, one of our other engineers, John Gerner, is also a drummer. So a lot of times if I'm the engineer on the session, he might be the drummer. And if he has a band in that needs a drummer, he'll be in here engineering and I'll be in there playing drums. It depends.
Okay.
So it's good to have two drummers on
standby.
Staff. Yeah. And we've got 2 or 3 guitarists too. So it's like, and everybody plays different instruments. Kind of the same way as like I'm not great at any of them, but I'm good enough to go in there and do. And then we've got other guys that's like, I'm really good at drums, but I can kind of play bass. It's like, we should just start a house band.
I mean, you might as well.
If we weren't so busy with other people's music.
That makes sense. Now, would you say that it's a natural progression for a musician and an artist to gravitate towards producing and engineering?
I don't think it used to be. I think it is now because the tools are so much more available. Back in the day before computer recording and stuff, it cost a lot of money to go out and buy, I mean, nothing quite this big, but, you know, a decent sized mixing board and a recorder, because, you know, at the time it was tape.
Yeah.
So even if you, let's say, for instance, 8-track half-inch machine, those were like $2,000-$3,000 back then, brand new.
Ooh.
So it costs a lot of money, and the microphones aren't cheap, and the wires and soundproofing a place. Now, you get a laptop, a couple of programs, a microphone, and you can pretty much record anything. So I think that a lot of artists are starting to do that. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. That's really cool for laying down demos and stuff. And if they've really kind of learned the art of recording, they can come up with some really good recordings. But what's lacking is a lot of time the production side and the ability to use some of the higher end studio equipment that is available, or just, you know, getting outside of the element that you're at, you know, recording at home as opposed to coming in and getting in another person's ears on it, or just being in a different creative space. So there's really no wrong way to do it, but, you know, it's definitely more available for people to be able to do it, and it's affected the business. I mean,
yeah,
if you you know, nowadays, like, let's say your car breaks down, you can pretty much Google or YouTube a video on how to, you know, change a battery or do something like that or whatever. Yep. It's the same thing with anything, and it's not that much different with music. It's just there's a lot more involved with how equipment is set up, and, you know, what happens when something's not working. You know,
the technical side of everything.
Yeah, you have to be able to track down. I think, at least from my end, you know, if a piece of equipment stops working, and that's your only piece of equipment, you're pretty much screwed. But if you've got, you know, a backup plan, or you've got, say, for instance, 48 channels, and one channel goes out, it's okay. You've got 47 more channels to work with.
Right.
Now, if the whole thing goes out, then it's like, all right, we don't have a mixing board anymore. That's kind of like a computer, for instance. You know, if your laptop crashes, how you gonna make music? You know, if you don't know how to fix it yourself, then you're gonna have to pay someone to fix it.
That makes sense. Now, as a person who does, you know, run sessions and engineer, would you prefer the artist to have some experience recording themselves or in having it down packed versus an artist coming to the studio? They're like, hey, this is my first time putting this concept down. I'm practicing it.
There's really pros and cons, because a lot of times when someone does record something themselves, whether they intend it to be a demo or whatever, that particular take at that moment might be great, but the sound quality may be horrible. At the same time, when they come to the studio, sometimes it turns out to where they've already listened to what they already did, and it could be a horrible take, it could be a whole, you know, whatever. But that's what they're so used to hearing, that doing it professionally, there's no way we're going to match that time that they did it, you know. Gotcha. And they've just got it, they've already heard it that way. Case in point, I've got a band that I'm actually doing an album with next week.
Okay.
That I've already heard all these demo versions, and I'm like, well, why are we re-recording them? Because a lot of these are really great. But they weren't intending those to be the released versions. So it's like, okay, well, I get it, but I don't know if you're going to match that energy for that particular take. But, you know, who knows? We'll see. It might be better. It might be worse.
Would you step in as a producer and be like, hey?
Well, it's not up to me at the end of the day.
I think this is the best version.
I mean, I'll tell them that, but it's not really up to me at the end of the day to make that final decision, because it's not my art. I'm just there to help them paint the canvas, so to speak. Like, it's at the end of the day, it's their musical and creative decision. So
understood.
But I have no problems telling them whether I like it or not.
That's definitely what you need in a session. Is someone to tell you, no, please do it again.
Some people don't want to hear that. Some people don't. I mean, there's been times where I've just been adamant. I'm like, I know you can do this better, or you did it better 3 takes ago and you said it wasn't good enough and whatever. And it's like, man, if we did it this way, this would be a better song. I don't know, it's got to be like this. All right. Can't tell you anything else about it, but don't say I didn't tell you so.
That part.
I've literally had people come back to me and say, "Oh, well, the DJ at the radio station said if we'd have done it like this," I was like, "That's exactly how we were trying to do it. You said you didn't want to do it that way." So now we're redoing the song, even when we could have just done it this way in the first place.
Oh.
It happens. Or the record label said this, Anyway.
Understood. So out of all of your years doing this, who would you say has been one of your favorite artists to do a session for?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's tons of them. I don't really have a favorite. I love working with the guys from Best Show in Town. We work every Thursday. Well, I say every Thursday. Sometimes we take the day off. But a lot of what they come in with is either something that they 100% have ready. They know exactly what they want, or they have an idea for something and we just start working on it. And so I never really know. Like, we have a session tomorrow.
Okay.
I know that we're wrapping up an album, but I know that there's one song left that they want to record. I have no idea what that song is.
Gotcha.
I heard the beat. I don't think I've heard the beat. Don't know what the concept of it's going to be. I know that it's got to match the concept of the rest of the record, but that's all I know so far. So it's kind of like, that's always kind of cool. It's not really knowing what you're going to get into for the day. That can be a double-edged sword sometimes. But I mean, there's tons of artists I've worked with. I've been lucky enough to work with quite a few. We're always loved working with Big Tuck, Tum Tum. I don't know that we ever did any stuff with them together, but I worked with them individually.
Okay.
I remember, working with Dero on his first album. That was like a multiple month project, and it was just like, I don't know, like I felt like we were working on it like 2 or 3 days a week, and then we might take some time off, and then of course he was traveling and doing different stuff. I mean, a lot of the bands that I work with, I absolutely just love working with them because I know, like, we've worked together so long. There's bands I've been recording for 10, 15 years, sometimes more. So I kind of have an idea, or at least know their demeanor, and I know. I know what they want out of the record. Right. Even though I've never heard the record, I know what they're looking to get out of it. So
that's always great.
Yeah, I mean, there's good ones, there's bad ones, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's all music, and as long as we have fun making it, hopefully the music sounds like they had making it. If it doesn't, then maybe we need to try again.
I was gonna say, would you ever tell an artist like, "Hey, maybe music is not your lane"?
I don't know if I've ever put it that way. I've probably put it worse ways before, but now there's people that come in and it's like, I'm like, am I being punked right now? Like, is there a hidden camera somewhere around here, or And it's kind of crazy, some of the stuff that comes in. Like, you'll have somebody go in there and just, there's no way they can think this sounds good, and they're not even open for interpretation. Like, I'll tell them, something like, "Oh, you're not singing in the right key, or you're not even in key with the song." And they're like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "I don't know that I can explain that to you. If you can't hear it, I'll go to the piano. I'll be like, okay, this song's in a, B flat minor. I'll play a B flat minor." They're like, "I don't know what that means." I was like, "I don't really know what it means, but I know enough to know that's not right." But sometimes you just gotta let them do it. What was it Chappelle said? Sometimes you gotta race. Just let them go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, this first issue is definitely dedicated to one of my favorite producers / engineers of Beat Nerd Hub. And I've always heard, Hub, Jeff, there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of stories there.
And Hub was one of the greatest, man. Working with him in the studio, or just even knowing Hub, period. Anybody that ever knew Hub, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me, that dude was just full of life. Like, I don't remember ever seeing him where he didn't have a smile on his face. He didn't have a joke to crack about something, whether it was on somebody else or even on himself.
Yep.
I mean, let alone his music, but just as a person alone, that dude was just, he was real. never dishonest. Always, if he wasn't going to be somewhere, or if he told you he was going to be somewhere, he was either going to be there or he's going to let you know he wasn't going to be there.
Yep.
And he'd have a good reason why. Whether it was, some kind of doctor's appointment or a football game or something, he had all kinds of different stuff going on. But
Yep.
this is one of the coolest dudes ever. I remember, I met him back when I was at another studio, and he was working with other artists at the time. So we didn't get a lot of time to really work together because he was in another studio. I'd be down the hall at another one.
Gotcha.
But we would run into each other in the hallway and stuff. Be like, "Oh man, what are you working on? What are you working on?" I'm gonna be wrapping up my session in a minute. I'm gonna come down here and chill with you. So we spent a lot of time together at that place. And then when I opened up my new spot, he would come by and be working with some of the artists that I was working with. I wouldn't even know he'd be on the session.
Wow.
Maybe like I'd have an artist coming in. I'm like, well, who made the beats that we're working on? Oh man, Hub did. I'm like, all right, cool. Hub's coming by. So we spent a lot of time together that way.
Oh wow.
One of the funniest memories I have, though, I don't know how I got wrapped up into this, but I got invited to go judge a beat competition one night, and I don't remember who even was putting this thing on or whatever, and I had no idea who was going to be in the contest. I get there, I don't know any of the people entering in the contest. I see Hub. I'm like, hey, so we're talking, and I'm like, man, what's going on? He doesn't realize I'm judging. I don't realize he's putting beats in until he's on stage playing his beats, and he looks out and he goes, man, you're not going to let me get by with nothing tonight, are you? I'm like, nah, I can't do that. It's like, I don't know none of these other people. I know you. It's going to look bad if I start throwing up 10s, either, 1 out of 10.
Yep.
And what was funny is one of the other panelists that night told everybody that, like, there's no way anybody's getting a 10 out of Jeff. And nobody did. I mean, to me, there's no such thing. As if there's 1 out of 10, nobody gets a 10. Period. There's no song ever created. Nothing's ever been created that's perfect. So I'm like, you might get a 9.5. You might get a 9.75, but you ain't getting a 10.
Okay.
So yeah, Hub, what was funny, though, is after all that, Hub wasn't mad. He was just like, man, I knew as soon as you walked in the door, this was going to be tough. I was like, well, I didn't want to do this in the first place, but, here we are. And that's something we talked about over the years. It was just funny. He was like, if I'd have had a different judge, I'd have probably won. I'm like, maybe, but would you have won fairly? So it was always just something funny. He never let me live that down.
He would always say something funny like that.
Yeah, he would always bring that up. He's like, man, remember that time you didn't let me win the beat contest? I wasn't going to let nobody win nothing. So y'all don't let me live on nothing. I'm gonna let you.
Right.
It was a fun night, though.
I bet hearing his masterpieces.
Man, he had some really good ones too, and I mean, it's not like I was the only judge there, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm just not gonna let Hub win because I know. So it was like I'm just judging off of what I can, and he was like one of the first 3 people to go on too. So it was like I was scoring everybody low at first.
Oh,
because I'm like, I got to set a precedence here. Like, who's, what I'm hearing so far. I'm like, I will call that an 8. And then as I started hearing stuff, I'm like, I don't know, man. I should have started off at like a 5 because this really ain't that good. Because I got no ceiling to go to.
Right.
Like if I say the first beat is a 10, everything else is better. I'm like, where's it gonna go from there? So I'm like, I'm gonna start off at like 6, maybe 5.
So silently, he's saying that Hub was the best in the room.
Definitely. I think he came in second. Actually, there was one other group that was there from out of town, like East Texas or something. That man, they just had something different at the time. I don't even think Hub really made the beats that he made that night for that night. It was just like, oh, there's a beat contest. Let me go show up. This is, it was just a weird night, but it was fun.
Good. Well, I definitely thank you for allowing me in your space and seeing the studio. I see so many toys that I want to play with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them collect dust some of the time, but they do get used. Not every day, but they do get used.
That sounds good. want to go ahead and give a shout out to your studio location where they can follow you?
We're SessionWorks Studios, located in Hurst, Texas, 441 West Pipeline Road. The phone number, you can call the number, but ain't nobody gonna answer. It's 817-282-2321. That'll get you some information on how to go to the website and actually contact us about booking. But website's just SessionWorksStudios.com. If you need to, you can just text me direct, and you will get a response. 214-586-7505.
And can they find you anywhere on social media?
Man, I'm on Facebook. That's it. You might have been expecting MySpace, but
not Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really mess with Twitter and all that stuff. The studio has social media. I'm not even sure what that is. I'm sure if you just type in SessionWorks, you'll probably find it. But
I did, so y'all can too.
Yeah, me personally, I just do Facebook, and I don't even like doing that. So
understood.
Yeah.
Well, definitely thank you again.
Anytime.
Guys, this has been King's Court with Dope Magazine. I'll see y'all next time. Oh, yeah.